Now, you can also have negative exponents when you are working with these rational exponents here. So what happens when you have a negative exponent? Now, let's say you have a to the negative m over n. You apply the same rules that you would apply to any negative exponent. So if you have a to the negative m over n, if a to the m over n is a real number, then all you have to do is take the negative exponent, and to make it positive, put it in the denominator. So a to the negative m over n will become 1 over a m over n, and make sure a does not equal 0, because you cannot divide by 0, so it's important that a is a non-zero number. So just to work with these negative exponents, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple examples here and see how to evaluate those expressions. Alright, let's say we have this expression here, 81 to the negative 3/2. The first thing you will do is make that a positive exponent. So put it in the denominator, 1 over 81 to the positive 3/2. Now once you make it a positive exponent, do the exact same thing that we did in those couple examples. Go ahead and break this expression down, which will give you 1 over 81. Now since you have 3 over 2, 3/2, that's going to be the same thing as 81 to the 1/2, and then the whole thing to the third power. So that will give you 1 over 81 to the 1/2 is square root of 81. And then you have the third power outside, which will give you 1 over square root of 81 is 9. 9 to the third will give you 1 over 729 cube. Or 9 cubed basically is 729, so you end up with 1 over 729 as your answer. Okay, so the only difference here is that you start working in the denominator. Because of your negative exponent, you have to go down to make it positive. Let's see what happens in an expression of this form. Now here you have negative 8 over 27, and this whole expression is to the negative 2/3. So again, just like we did up there, put it in the denominator. Negative will become positive, so you end up with negative 8 over 27. And now your exponent will become a positive 2/3. Okay, now this negative sign is not going to change, because that is not an exponential negative sign. It's a negative on the base itself, so that negative stays. The only negative that becomes positive is here in your exponent. Okay, so just like we did earlier, 1 over, you can write this as negative 8 over 27 to the third power, and the whole thing to the second, which will give you 1 over, let's see, cube root of negative 8 over 27, okay, for the 1/3, and then this whole thing to the second power, which will give you, let's see, 1 over cube root of negative 8 over 27. You can say cube root of negative 8 is going to be negative 2. Cube root of 27 is going to be 3. Okay, and then don't forget that square on the outside. And let's see, if I square my denominator term, I should end up with 1 over negative 2 square will be 4, 3 square will be 9. So you will end up with 4 over 9 in your denominator. Okay, now anytime you have a fraction in your denominator, basically if you take the denominator and multiply that into your numerator, you will end up with I'm sorry, I said that wrong. If you take the denominator and invert it and multiply it into your numerator, so 1 times 9 over 4, okay? Denominator, invert it and multiply into your numerator, and you will end up with the value of your expression here, which is 9 over 4. Okay, so this one is a little different, as you can see, from what we have done on the first example here. Okay. Okay, so just to review everything that we did, whenever you have an expression of the form a to the m over n, if all the roots are real numbers, then you can go ahead and write this expression as a to the m over n. You can write it as a to the 1 over n and then the whole thing to the m power, which is what we have been doing so far. Or you can switch it around a little and take it as a to the m and then put the 1 over n on the outside. Just depends on what kind of a problem you're dealing with. So to understand the difference between these two methods, let's go ahead and take a look at a simple problem here. Let's say we have 27 to the 2/3, okay? We'll go ahead and solve this by our first method, which is what we have been doing so far, 1 over n, and then putting the m outside. So this should break down into 27 1/3, and then take the 2 outside, which is basically cube root of 27, and then square it, which will give us cube root of 27 is 3, the square on the outside, 3 square is 9, okay? So that was one way of doing it. What the second method is saying is first you do the m and then you do the 1 over n. So let's see how that will work in our example here. So 27 to the 2/3. We can go ahead and break this down as 27 times 27 to the second power, okay, and then put the 1/3 on the outside. So you can see how we switched from here. 1/3 on the outside, 2 is on the inside. So the first thing you will do is square 27, and square of 27 should give you 729, okay, and then you take the 1/3. So 1/3 power of 729 is the same thing as cube root of 729, and that should also give you 9 as your answer. So just depending on what kind of problem you have, go ahead and try and see which method will be more easier to work with and go ahead and solve it that way.